It's time to take a look at Gerald and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and it is Netflix Tuesday, so I am taking a look at movies that are available currently on Netflix, and today's review is of 2018's 14 Cameras. Now, you might remember that in October, I reviewed 13 Cameras and liked it a fair bit. I thought it could have gone a little bit further. It felt like it was taking a concept and stretching it a bit too thin for an hour and a half long movie, and now we have a sequel. I promised a review of 14 Cameras back then, coming up soon, and it's not as soon as I thought it would be, but here we are. I did watch it last night, and what I came away with was a movie that if you liked 13 Cameras, I really do think you'll like this one. It took everything about that and made some improvements, made some updates, made some tweaks, and I think elevated itself by a skosh in every way possible. Now, I started looking up reviews of this one, and I started seeing just words like, well, I started seeing like 1 stars and words like exploitative and gross and so forth. And it's honestly, it makes me glad that I started this channel, that I review horror movies exclusively. Movies that push past the levels of good taste and explore the darker corners of the creative mind. And I really think it speaks to fans that have the fortitude to recognize the difference between fiction and nonfiction, and then delight in the darkness that follows through with that. And I really think that with a lot of film critics, not all, mind you, but a lot of film critics, they find movies like this and they just get dismissed out of turn. And I really think that's a darn shame. It's terribly unfair because within the horror genre, there is such an opportunity for going to those extremes and really fleshing out really complex characters and really complex situations, and taking the concept of conflict and pushing it to the nth degree and really eking out some real art out of the art of cinema. But back to this review specifically, I think in order to get into more details, I'm going to have to get into the categories. So as always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot of this one, a lot of times when I come up with these, it's a little bit of a gut feeling, just kind of weighing all the things, hopping in the shower and just really giving it some good thought. And I came up with a number on this one, and I was thinking, really? I'm giving 14 Cameras a plot score of 14. That's just how it is. That's how I feel about it. I weighed it in my mind. I'm like, should it be higher? Should it be lower? Just to avoid that number? Like, no, it's 14. This followed the character of Gerald again, and rather than having a house he rents, instead he now has multiple houses all over like the Santa Fe, Albuquerque area, and he rents them out as Airbnb type situations. And this movie focuses on one family in particular and one house in particular that rents a large house with a swimming pool and the whole bit for a week of vacation festivities. And of course, there are hidden cameras throughout, and Gerald is watching them throughout. And he also has quite a few other little irons in the fire, as it were, with his hobby. And things just start unraveling. Threads start getting pulled from all sorts of directions, and everything that he's designed so meticulously starts to just kind of fall apart on him. Overall, how I would really think about, define this movie is just interesting. It was interesting in a character study kind of way that almost approached a root for the villain kind of level there, in a demented fashion. It was interesting in a self-reflective way, as the first movie was, as 13 Cameras was, just looking at the concept of privacy and how much we take it for granted, and honestly, the illusion of it. It was interesting in a technical way. Actually, this movie delved into the finer details of Gerald's hobby, and wondering how he could have prevented those threads from unraveling and prevented the house of cards from toppling as it did. Or if the universe was just completely dead set on throwing up challenges for him. As interesting as it was, though, it really wasn't a whole lot cinematic. There wasn't a whole lot new in terms of what it brought to the screen cinematically. It was a little bit new and updated from 13 Cameras, but not in any major way. It was just kind of finer details and tweaks and bringing it more up to speed. up to the 2018 era kind of thing. From a written plot perspective, I did think it was better than 13 Cameras, just by a skosh, but I did think so. I thought that the concept of what he was going through was better fleshed out, and I honestly thought that the situation with the family in the house was explored more. There was better character development. There was more storyline going on there beyond just what Gerald was doing, and that made what he was doing and what he interacted with a bit more real. And I liked that. So, 14 out of 25 for the plot. The intent, I gave a 12 out of 25, which is, again, a little bit better than the intent score of 13 Cameras. I think the intent of this one was to bring the Gerald character back to the screen, update the camera technology, and explore his character just a little bit more using the situational conflicts to do so. And I thought on that level it actually succeeded a fair bit. The only real complaint that I have, and why it didn't elevate itself beyond this point of, I would say, average, is although we get to see a more meticulous side of Gerald, we also don't get to see any element of his core character. And that's kind of the part that interested me a little bit more. What made him tick? What was his, not necessarily diving into his backstory, but just who he was a bit more, aside from this lumbering, creeping gorilla of a man that liked to watch people. I wanted to know what made him tick, just a lot more than this movie revealed, and I felt a bit disappointed in that front. The acting, I gave an 18 out of 25. Neville Archambault as Gerald was fantastic, as he was in the first movie. I thought that his performance in this one was just exemplary, and he really brought that creepiness to the screen in such a beautiful manner, and in every single frame that he was on camera, just the movement and the facial expressions and the tics and the little finer details, he really fleshed the Gerald character out well. I went and I had to go and find footage of him, and I did. I actually managed this time to find, like fans standing next to him and, taking little snippet videos with him, and just to see if he was actually like the Gerald character or not, just in terms of the lumbering mouth and cape, Coke bottle glasses, type. And so I was pleasantly surprised that he was not, that he is an average, just very muscular man, and that everything about Gerald was acting and quality acting at that. But more than that, again, elevating from 13 Cameras just a bit, I thought that the acting job of the people surrounding him was even better. The acting job of the family that stayed in the house was really sold well. Again, their characters were brought to life more, and the performances that all the actors did helped that out significantly. So all told, very impressed on that front. And this is another element where, when I see 1-star reviews and exploitative and gross, it just makes me sad, because these performances are worth noting, and I feel bad that they get dismissed just because this is a bit of a sick and twisted movie. The technical, I gave a 14 out of 25. Everything on a technical level, again, was a bit of an improvement. The set design, the makeup, the camera work, the editing, all of that was just a bit better and made it feel a bit more real, a bit more updated, and more polished. But I also really love the attention to detail, especially going into the finer bits of what Gerald was doing. I mean, actually going to a .onion site when he was going to the search of the dark web, things like that. This really got, they took some creative licenses, certainly, in what was technologically, shown. But even so, it was still fascinating, the level of detail that they really injected into this movie, and I appreciate that. So, all told, this gives a total score of 58 out of 100 points, whereas 13 Cameras got 45 out of 100. Would I recommend this movie? That's a tough one. I liked it, but I also recognize the fact that this is not for everybody. What I will say is, if you have seen 13 Cameras and you thought it was worth watching, or you at the very least didn't hate it, I think that this is worth giving a shot. If you haven't seen either, you don't have to have seen 13 Cameras to watch this one. I really don't believe so. But maybe just watch the first 5, maybe 10 minutes of this one and just see, because there is a bit of a opening intro kind of thing that doesn't really necessarily tie into the rest of the movie. And, maybe that should be your litmus test. If you haven't been introduced to this franchise, you want to start with this one and not 13 Cameras, just maybe give the first 5 or 10 minutes a whirl there, see what you think, and from there you should be able to extrapolate whether or not you'd be interested in the rest of the film. But me personally, I would recommend it. I did like it, and that's my review of 2018's 14 Cameras. I really thank you for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.